Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are going to get started at about 3 after to allow a few more people to join. For those of you that are just joining us, we're going to give it about another minute before we get started. All right. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. We have with us Fred Kraus, Octavian Vlad, and Ying Kin. Today, they're going to be talking to us about the Archibus V25.3 release. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Everyone is on mute. If you have any questions, please feel free to enter them into the questions or chat section, and we will answer those at the end of the session. We are also recording this, and we will be sending out the recording either later today or tomorrow. With that, I will turn it over to Fred.
Thank you, Danielle. I'm assuming everybody can hear me okay?
Yes, we
Danielle?
can.
All right, great. So yeah, welcome everybody. And again, my name is Fred Kraus. I run product for Archibus, and joining me are my colleagues Ying and Octavian to talk about what we've done in Archibus version 25.3. So with that, we'll get started. And what we'll talk about today are mostly we'll focus on the two new features in user-defined fields and maintenance checklists. I'll then talk a little bit about continuing improvements that we've done for 25.3. Then kind of talk about what our engineers have been doing in discovery for the future, and then related to the future, we'll talk a little bit about what we're thinking about for what's next in the coming year. So we get started with user-defined fields, which I label under the configuration. Really trying to make Archibus out of the box just more configurable for you, and that's one of the themes that we'll continue to pull on in the coming year. And what we've done for user-defined fields is this again focusing on a new area, kind of a big a new focus for us. And I pick on a hospital deployment in this scenario, and you can imagine that this can apply to many different scenarios, being able to create or promote new fields in Archibus. But in this case, just to try to focus in on a specific scenario, I talk about the hospital facility manager. And what do they need to do? They need to identify specific room data that's not in stock forms or reports, such as room pressure, so that I can successfully contribute to Joint Commission accreditation process. For those in healthcare, you know that Joint Commission does accredit hospitals to be able to make Medicare payments. It's obviously very important for hospitals to be accredited through Joint Commission, and so they spend a lot of time being able to comply with the accreditation process. And in this example, one of the things that they need to do is to be able to report on items such as room pressure that's not really part of Archibus stock forms. So we want to make it part of stock forms. And we do this in being able to promote through the defined rooms and defined locations fields that are either not in those forms or reports out of the box, but are part of the Archibus database, or new fields that are not part of the database. And once they've defined them, they want to use them. So as a hospital facility manager, once I've identified the need to track room pressure, I need a way to enter that field into room forms so that I can report on it as needed. So again, back to define locations and define employees, locations being buildings, floors, or rooms. The ability to define and then promote to use those fields to then enter values into those fields and then report on them is something that we've been able to roll out to you. And also on the Space Console, the floors list, for those familiar with the Space Console, the floors list or the rooms list, edit floors or edit rooms, and on the employees list and edit employees, you can also see those fields that you've defined or promoted. I should also mention before I switch slides that the select fields dialog then can show and hide those new fields that you've defined. And finally, as a hospital facility manager, I need to easily identify pressurized rooms as well as locate rooms with positive or negative pressure by highlight so that I can comply with Joint Commission requirements. So here's an example. Not only can the hospital facility manager be able to define and promote fields to use and report on, but also to highlight on some of those that have values. An enumerated list is one such field that lends itself very well to highlights. So in this example, the facility manager is defining operating rooms as positive pressure rooms and reception rooms and the restrooms as negative pressure rooms, and other rooms as neutral pressure. And once those are defined, then you can visually see what you've done by highlights, and then export this to PDF so that you can actually see them on the floor plan. So that's a brief overview of what we've been able to do with user-defined fields, again, in the theme of being able to make Archibus out of the box more configurable for you. And to actually demonstrate that in more detail, I'll invite Octavian to walk us through this brief video.
Hi everyone, I'm happy that you are here, and I'm hopeful that our new feature will help you in your day-to-day job. So let's start the demonstration. Today I'm a hospital space manager and I'm trying to add a new field for the room pressure. The first step is for me to look if the fields already exist or not. In this case, there's no field called pressure. So I'm going to add a new field, an enumeration field with different values such as neutral, negative, and positive. And we simplify the form as much as possible so you don't have to take many steps to create a new field. So when I save, the field is added to the database and is also promoted to the define room forms and to the Space Console. So basically, once I added a field, I can enter data for it. In the next step, I'll show you in the Space Console as a space manager how I can add data to the room pressure field and how I can highlight the floor plan by this field. So I'm working with building NCO5 and floor number 1. As a space manager, I select several rooms from the floor plan. And I will be entering data for all these rooms. For the sake of the example, as a space manager, I'll be entering different values for every room. For example, this room has a negative pressure. The next room, which could be an operation room, I'll be setting the pressure to positive, and so on, negative and positive pressure. And once I have entered the values that I want for a room pressure, I can go on and highlight on the floor plan in order to see which rooms are negative and positive. So I can enable the highlight and then select it from the list. And now I can see that some of the rooms are colored in yellow, and others are colored in blue, and other in purple, depending on the values. I can do the same for border highlight, and I can turn on also the legend, and I can see that yellow rooms are negative, and the rooms for which I haven't set any values are blue, and purple are the positive rooms. Beside the legend, I can also turn on highlight the labels for every room, and I can also export what I can see on the screen to a PDF report. Just as a quick reminder, so I demonstrated the functionality for a room field, but as facility managers, you can also add user-defined fields for buildings and floors and employees. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Octavian. And before we move on, also to answer what we've had for questions, what type of fields can you add?
So I can add the following types of fields. As we've seen in the demonstration, I can add a enumerated field with different values that the user can pick. Then I can add a free text field with up to 500 characters. I can add numerical fields with decimals and integer fields, and date and time fields. And also as a important note, all the fields that we create as space managers are database schema fields. They will be available also for system administrators in the Archibus data dictionary. So they will behave like any other database field.
Thank you. And also because this is something, the ability to create fields is something you probably don't want to roll out to all your users. We do enable this ability behind a security group. So it's behind security for those who have access to those definition, those background data views, and also those who have, and in addition, those who have the correct security group can do this. Thank you, Octavian.
Thank you very much.
So that was user-defined fields, and the next bigger piece of functionality that we want to talk about, we're really excited to roll out, is maintenance checklists. So again, like I defined user stories as examples, I'll do the same thing here. In this case, I'm talking about in the world of education, and of course you can imagine if you're in if you do have maintenance or if you're in a compliance role, this will apply to many different organizations in many verticals. So as a university compliance officer, I need to prove that our fire barriers comply with regulations by having our field workers fill out surveys when they perform their inspections or complete their regular PMs. So we've implemented the ability to define maintenance checklists within maintenance operations, and with the aim to be able to comply with regulations that we see that when they relate to maintenance operations. So in this case, it's fire barriers. So this is an example of a new view that we've created to make it easy to create those kind of checklists and use different types of answers. And if you're familiar with the compliance questionnaire framework, we're using that same framework, but just tying it to maintenance operations. So you can define questions and answers and use answers of different types. Yes, no, free form text, measurements, and many other types. Now, once you've created those checklists, what do you want to do? You want to use them. And what we've done is provide the ability to use those checklists in SLA workflow. So you can create those checklists, and then you can create a SLA workflow step called checklist, and put those into your SLAs for preventive maintenance work, for on-demand work, and you can tie those SLAs as you know, as those familiar with SLAs, to PM procedures, to equipment standards, to locations or buildings, anywhere that SLAs are used. These workflow steps are also available. This allows us to be a little bit more flexible with inserting those questionnaires into the workflow and providing, for example, maybe more than one workflow step per SLAs. You can have 2 or 3 different checklists for the same workflow. So you've created those checklists. You've defined the workflow. Now it's time to actually use them. So as a university maintenance employee, I need to make sure that the fire barriers are performing properly when I do my semi-annual inspections. I know the importance of this work and my critical role in fulfilling it. So being able to access those checklists on the mobile maintenance app is the next step that we've fulfilled. So you can fill out and submit those surveys by calling up those checklists on your mobile device and answering questions, defining who you are by and who you are by filling out the inspected by and then submitting those answers and completing that workflow step. And finally, you've defined the checklists, you've used them, and now you want to report on results. So as a university compliance officer, I need to prove that my fire barriers have all been inspected. I need to show compliance and plans to address any deficiencies. So we have a new maintenance survey report that allows the compliance officer to pull up by any of these filter parameters, pull up checklists, the questions, the answers, where those surveys have been used, and export the results. Just a note on, and I mentioned we are leveraging the compliance questionnaire framework, but we still have the compliance application. So we wanted to just mention the differentiation when you would use maintenance or when you may use compliance. And really simply, use a maintenance to create and manage checklists to support survey operations, which I just demonstrated with the example, and use compliance to track compliance programs, requirements, and outcomes. So if you really have to establish a robust compliance program and track those programs and requirements, and link to more complex questionnaires and link those to compliance events, then you would use the compliance application for that. But if you simply want to have questionnaires or checklists for maintenance operations, you can do that in the maintenance application. And just to take us through that example in a little bit more detail, I'll invite Ying to narrate this short video.
Thanks, Fred. Welcome, everyone. We're very excited to show you the defined maintenance, to show you the maintenance checklist feature we built in 25.3, because we understand this is a long-standing request from you, our customers, and then we got lots of votes from user voice that it's one of the top voted ideas. So we were very happy that we were able to put that into 25.3 and build on, as Fred mentioned, on our existing compliance framework, which will not affect any of our existing compliance functionality, but allow the abilities to connect between compliance and maintenance. So I'm gonna quickly show you how a compliance officers can create a link checklist, and then a field worker will be able to complete surveys from their tablets, and then compliance officer reports on the survey results. So Fred, can you start the demo? So the first step, compliance officers use define maintenance checklist view to create checklist. So we designed this view to make this very tedious task as easy as possible for you. Compliance officer can create a checklist, and then he can start to add the section. This is a predefined session, so you don't need to enter any answer. Just type in the session title, and you can click this action to go into adding your questions. So you can add your question text. The answers are already being added for you. And you can add next question. You can also add your follow-up questions. For example, you can add follow-up comments, photos. You can add or create service request actions to any of those answers of this question. When you're happy with all your questions, you can save the session and move on to your next session. We support many questions type, single choice, multiple choice, text, date, measurement, documents. You can also search for existing questions. Once you're happy with your checklist, the compliance officer can go into SLA to link your SLAs to the checklist. So this is a fire door monthly inspection SLAs. You can go into the issue status, and you can connect both checklist, maintenance checklist, and the compliance questionnaires. And you can assign this this work to a craft person that assigned to this work. And you can link the checklist to the work so that the craft person will be able to see this checklist. And you can enter multiple checklists as needed, and you can reorder them as you wish. Once you are done with linking, the craft person will be able to see them from their mobile app tablet. So this is a tram. He started his work, and then he can see his checklist from the checklist, and he can open up the checklist and going through each one of the questions and check them off. And he can assign his name and date. Once he complete this checklist, the answers will all be automatically uploaded into the server. So compliance officer can review the results immediately. So for example, in this particular checklist, there is a question: is the fire door compliant? I can search on that question and figure out if equipment are compliant with the requirement. So from here, I can see fire door 11 compliant, fire door 12 is no. So based on that, I can start to search on fire door 11. So filtering on this equipment code, and then I can find out all the questions regarding this equipment, and then I can report them to a PDF or docx so that I can use that as a proof to show the officials that this fire door 11 is compliant. On the other hand, for fire door 12, I can figure out what failed, and I can take actions on those field questions. So that's a quick demo for this maintenance checklist feature, and I hope it is clear to you. So thank you.
Thank you, Ying. It was clear to me, so that's one indication. No, thanks for explaining it, and hopefully that is an overview of the maintenance checklists and what we've been able to do. Again, leveraging the questionnaire framework. You You don't have to use or buy compliance to use the maintenance checklists. And I just wanted to make that clear. All of this is within the maintenance application. But again, if you wanted to have a broader compliance, track compliance programs and requirements and events, that's when you would use the compliance questionnaires in the compliance application.
Yeah.
So those were the two main focus areas for 25.3 that we've been able to deliver, the checklists and the user-defined fields. But there's other things that we've been able to continue to improve upon. And I'll mention some of those here. Most of them have to do with the Back to Work initiative that we introduced in our last release. If you were on with us for 25.2, we talked a lot about back to work. That theme, of course, is not going away anytime soon. And so we've been able to add a little bit more in that for 25.3. Firstly, if as a reminder for back to work, one of the ways that we thought about that were, employees are not always going to be back to the office. Some of them are always going to be working from home, and others that do come back to the office may want to define when they're coming back to the office in days of the week. So that was one of the things that we implemented and delivered for 25.2. But there were some other things, related to that, some other items that we wanted to improve upon for 25.3. And one of them was being able to show occupancy plans also by the day of the week. I'll just read that. As a space planner, I'd like my occupancy plans to show where people are planning to sit by day of the week. And that's exactly what we've been able to do by being able to show, highlight, and print occupancy plans based on employees and their days that they've been defined back to the office. Similarly, the vacancy plan can also show by day of the week. So you can actually show a view, not only show me a view of the occupancy plan by Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, for example, here, but also show me rooms that are vacant on Tuesday and Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or any combination thereof, so that you can actually show those vacancies by day of the week and place people and match people who are defined to go in the office on those days accordingly in part of your occupancy planning exercise. So that's one thing we've been able to improve upon. The other is in a hoteling and work request cleaning operation that we introduced in 25.2. So just as a brief reminder, in 25.2 for back to work, we, based on a lot of comments that came from you or your partners, we implemented this process where after booking, and this is maybe through the workplace interface, you're booking hotel rooms, and once the day has ended, this process automatically initiates a work request to clean those rooms and sets those rooms to the status of being able being required cleaning, and those work requests then go and identify those rooms that need to be cleaned. And once that work is completed, the rooms then automatically become available to use again for the next day's booking. However, that process doesn't work very well if you're booking ahead of time. So if you are booking ahead of time, let's say today's Tuesday and they want to book a room for Thursday, the room, first of all, doesn't need to be cleaned when I'm booking it, doesn't need to be available when I'm booking it, but it does need to be clean. I need to be assured that the room is clean when I come in on Thursday. And this is what this new piece of functionality does. For booking for rooms that do require cleaning when I'm coming in on Thursday, that they haven't been, for some reason, they haven't been cleaned yet, I'll be notified of that, and I'll be notified to actually pick another room. Hey, that room that you booked the other day, it still requires cleaning. That's its status. So you please cancel this booking and reserve another room in that case. We also provide an option to auto cancel those rooms. In that case, auto cancel and notify employees. If you don't want to auto cancel, then this is an example. This screenshot is an example of showing the detailed my booking screen on Workplace, and you see here this room says it requires cleaning and that you should cancel and rebook. therefore there's a difference between just-in-time bookings where if you're booking, you go in and you use your workplace web app to book at the beginning of the day. Those rooms that you're looking at need to be have that status of clean and available. But if you're booking in the future, it doesn't need that until you actually go in. So this mentions that those changes in the search behavior are appropriately set. And finally, we have a new, as part of the process, we have an updated bookings report. So as a facility manager, I want to have details of who booked which spaces. So when booked which spaces and when, so that I'm armed with occupancy statistics, utilization information, and if needed, contact tracing data. So this new bookings report allows that facility manager to show and report on all of that information, searching by buildings, visitors, dates. You can show highlight reports of which spaces have been booked and when, and all the booking details, so you can actually see quickly who has booked and where, in case there are some reasons to be able to report on that in case someone does fall ill. You know who else was around in that office on that day. And finally, in the Workplace app, if you are part of a campus deployment, we only show buildings in the portfolio that have hotelable rooms. If you are trying to book space and you want to, you have maybe a home building, but you want to book in another building, the list only shows you buildings that have rooms that are available, and you can also search for buildings that search bar wasn't available before 25.3. So those are some improvements that we've made in addition to the major new features. And again, just really pulling on that back to work theme that we've all been, I'm sure it's been on all of our minds in the last few months. So that leads us to discovery. What else have we been tinkering with for the future? And one area I'm really excited to present is on our Autodesk Forge integration. And I'll just read the user story before going into details. As a building manager responsible for asset reliability and maintenance, I'd like to have access to all asset details that were established in BIM during the design construction phase so that I can pull up that information online and in one place. So this is really building on what we have now is a 3D navigator in Archibus that connects BIM, being able to publish BIM models to 3D and show them in Archibus. Since we've first introduced the 3D navigator, Autodesk has done really a lot of advancements in terms of providing models on its cloud environment, and then also providing APIs into those models so that different systems can interact with those models. And they've labeled that set of APIs the Forge APIs. So when I say Forge integration, I'm talking about those APIs that allow us, Archibus, to connect to cloud models that are in Autodesk's environment. And again, it's for visualize those system connections, planning maintenance, building digital twin integration. Digital twin is as a fairly new term that we've been really interested in investigating in the future. So this is an example of some use cases, and there's many more that Forge integration would afford us. I do have and again, this is just a proof of concept. It's not a product yet. Our engineers are working on it. So I wanted to just mention some of that in the area of discovery that we're working on more in the coming year. And here's an example of a brief demonstration showing what we've been able to do. And again, just as a proof of concept within using the Forge APIs within Archibus. Here's an example of a building console, if you will. The naming, of course, is not final, but here's an example of a building you can see as showing the 3D model that's coming right from the BIM from Autodesk. And you can actually interact with them. I'm going to show some cases where you can interact with that model, showing model data and Archibus data side by side. So if you're pulling up this piece of equipment, you can actually see the cooling towers, Archibus data and model properties all in one place. Similarly, for example, with rooms data, honing in on a floor, being able to rotate it around, and interacting with the model by showing, for example, showing highlights based on Archibus data. So show me all of the offices that are on that floor. This is a way that you can use the APIs to interact with that model. And again, showing the properties that come from perhaps both the model and from Archibus. The category and type and division department would be coming from Archibus in that case. Here we can actually show some systems individually. So air supply systems, and maybe the whole system. And maybe you want to see this in context of the whole building. Again, this is a work in progress, but some neat scenarios may come from that information. So for example, you might want to be able to interact and show your work requests. Show me the location of this work request. So you can pick on a work request and may see the location of the work request, the rooms that it affects. And then, of course, the systems that interact with those rooms. So you can imagine if you needed to shut off part of a system, which rooms would it affect? Or if you need to go to those rooms to service that equipment, where is that equipment positioned in that room? So some are some of the use cases that we're investigating and looking at dealing with in the future. So speaking of the future, the last little bit is about what's next. What are we looking to do in the future, in the coming year or two? And I wanted to just broadly talk about some themes. So nothing really specific here, but themes that we're going to continue to work on, again, in the future, in the coming year. The first is going back to what we've done for user-defined fields, make it easier to use standard software. That's additional configuration improvements, for example, user-defined fields for assets. We enabled it for buildings, floors, and rooms, and employees. Our next step is to enable it for assets and asset standards, equipment standards, and making it easier to report on information, making reports more configurable and easier to adjust. Those are a theme around. Those are items in the theme around making it easier to use standard software. Similar to those themes I mentioned, user experience will continue to invest in user experience and user interface improvements and key module improvements. We want to align more with some of our target markets. Many of you are in healthcare, or education, or in the public sector, or in corporate sector. We're going to be able to align with some of those target markets a little bit better than we have in the past. So we are going to look at some healthcare initiatives that we can do, and in addition, education initiatives that we can do, and then perhaps some others. We want to innovate on promising technologies. A lot has been made over the years, and even more so in this in the pandemic times for back to work, leveraging IoT, leveraging it for space utilization as well as for predictive maintenance. We want to be able to innovate on those promising technologies. And I mentioned digital twins before. And finally, Archibus as a product and platform is part of a larger Space IQ family of products, and we're looking at ways to leverage additional Space IQ solutions in the coming year, make it easier for you to do your work with Archibus and with the Space IQ family of solutions. And as a reminder, that's some of the themes that we're working on, and we get our ideas from you. So we want you as part of our community to use user voice to submit your ideas and vote on ideas that you find there. The more votes that an idea gets in user voice, the more we know it applies to many of you, and it's important to you, and it helps us prioritize our work in product management. So if you don't have a login to user voice, get one. Talk to your partner about registering your email domain with us so you can use the Archibus forum to submit your ideas, and again to vote on ideas that are already there that apply to you, so we know that those ideas are gaining popularity. Ying mentioned before that we've the checklist was one of the most voted upon ideas. We know it's important, so we work on it. So it helps us engage with you as our users and as part of our community. And with that, I think that wraps up the formal presentation part of our day. I hope you liked what you saw, and at this time we're happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Fred, Octavian, and Ying. That was great. We do have several questions, so we will try to get through all of them. I think we have about 19 minutes left. If we are not able to get through all of them, we will create an FAQ and send that out with the recording. So with that, the first question that we have is, will the user-defined fields be rolled into the assets, equipment, and planned maintenance modules, and when will this be achieved?
So I mentioned, I'll take a stab at this, and Octavian, feel free to add any color. We implemented it for 25.3, as I mentioned, for locations and for employees. We're working in 25.4 to show user-defined fields, being able to promote them in for equipment and for equipment standards. And then going back to user voice, we'd encourage any ideas and votes on other areas you find important that we can continue to use that functionality for. Octavian, do you have anything to add for that?
No, I think you are correct. So we are working to add user-defined fields and promoting existing fields for equipment and equipment standard, and this will happen in 25.4. We may have an iterative approach where in 25.4 we deliver a simplified view to work with user-defined fields for equipment, and then in the following releases we may add some more functionality and maybe go into other types of assets.
Great, thank you. The next question is, can we control by role who can edit the new fields versus existing fields? For instance, a facilities engineer might update the pressure but not the room type.
I see. It's a good suggestion. Right now, we don't control we don't control what we control broadly. So by security group, who can promote either existing fields or add new ones, but don't designate which ones are controlled by which. I will add though that Octavian, again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but in the Archibus data dictionary, we do have field by field edit control. So that hasn't changed. That's something that we've had in our schema for a while. So if you did have specific fields that you wanted to use for specific purposes, I think by security group you can control that in our data dictionary. Octavian, does anything that you want to?
I think you are correct. You can, as a system administrator, as an Archibus system administrator, you can use the Archibus data or field dictionary to control to add security to each field. So I think that is already can be achieved through that functionality. So after you define the fields, you can coordinate with the system administrator to add the additional security for each field.
Great, thank you. Next question, will the new fields be portable to version upgrades?
Yes. So they are regular schema fields, so they will be available in your database. So even if you upgrade, then they will stay in your database, and they will still be visible in the in forms and the reports where we enable them.
Thank you. So can the entire floor plan that is shown in the Space Console be exported into a Word or PDF document? What does that look like?
Yes, you can print the floor plan to a PDF report. So depending on what highlights you enable, so for example, you might want to highlight the floor plan by occupancy, and then some rooms will be yellow if they are at capacity, some will be green if they are at under capacity, and so on. And you might want to also turn on the employee name labels on the floor plan, so you can see where each employee sits on the floor plan. And then there is a button to right above the floor plan, and you can export the floor plan to a PDF report,
Right.
where you'll see exactly what you see on the screen, the floor plan with highlights and the employee names.
Yeah, so and this is existing functionality. It's nothing new that we added for 25.3, but for 25.3, not only can those exported pagina reports or PDF reports show the traditional highlights that we provided out of the box, but also the new highlights that have been added through user-defined fields.
Great, thank you. I believe you've answered this question, but just in case the answer was missed, is this limited to the building employee room table?
And floors.
And floors, okay. Got it. Okay, the next question, are the new user-defined fields available to use right away, or do you need to restart Tomcat?
They are available right away, especially if you have an enterprise deployment. If you have a cluster cloud deployment, we have a known limitation. So if the deployment is split on several servers, you might need to restart some of the servers. But the one for which you use the instance to create the field will be updated for sure. So typically you don't have to restart Tomcat.
Right. I was actually thinking when upgrading, but of course when you're upgrading, you're upgrading to a new version. But yeah, when you're, as the video showed, there was no magic that we did in the video. You define those new user-defined fields, and then they're available right away without any restarting of the server.
Thank you. And I believe this next question is regarding the checklist. Will this function be available in what modules? On demand?
Yes, on-demand work and which we renamed corrective maintenance and preventive maintenance.
Great, thank you. Next question, can these checklists be used to do condition assessment during a survey, or more importantly, after a PM or repair, and send the results to the builder to update, maintain overall facility condition assessment in Builder?
It's a good question. I'll take part of that. I think that maybe Octavian, you want to take the Builder part, but this is available now in I mentioned the two applications in our maintenance domain that it applies to. Condition assessment, we do have on the roadmap to hook up the new framework to condition assessment. Right now, it's still in the questionnaires that appear in condition assessment. That framework hasn't changed. It's still the existing. It still has it as it has been. So what we focused on is maintenance and not condition assessment for this release. And as far as I don't know if that answers also the Builder question. Octavian, do you have
I think
anything to add about Builder?
it does. So because the condition assessment still uses the old framework for questionnaire, you cannot use the new questionnaires to do condition assessment. Of course, you could create a questionnaire under on demand, right? And then collect some data there, but it's not synchronized with the Builder SMS. And you are left with the option of exporting those responses to Excel or printing them out and then filling them on the other side. So it's not integrated with Builder SMS.
Thank you. The next question is, can a check question trigger another function such as a service request, and can you default information such as location data into that service request?
Ying?
Yes, hi. Yes, you can. So in maintenance checklist and compliance questionnaire, you can create service requests for questions, for answers. There is a checkbox in the question page that you can check and then select what, if you want that to create a service request for that yes or no answers. And based on that, you will be able to see a button. In there, you can specify your parameters for your service request.
Thank you, Ying. The next question is, can I restrict by the work request that a survey was carried out for? I did not see it as a field to select from in the report.
By work request? I believe so, but I'll let Ying answer that.
Clarify, could you read that question for me again?
I can summarize. Is the report, the new checklist report, can you restrict or filter by individual work request?
Yes, you can. We added that feature based on one of the feedback we got from business partners. So yes, there is a work request field that you can filter on.
Great, thank you. Okay, the next question. With the checklist, can it be used across multiple equipment to make it faster for the technician to go through preventive maintenance once they return to the office and a shared computer?
I can try to take this one, Ying, unless you want to.
You can go ahead.
Since we allow, the workflow is to tie the checklist to SLAs. The SLAs can span the SLAs. It depends on the request parameter of the SLA. So, for example, if you had an SLA for a procedure or a equipment standard or a location, then that gives, I believe, I could be wrong on this, my interpretation, but it gives you the ability to then use that across multiple work requests. So you could have, you could have the same, you could have one work request, for example, for a floor, and you can say all the equipment on the floor, do a checklist for that. That might be one way of handling that scenario in bulk, if that makes sense. Ying, is there anything that you wanted to add?
Yes, I think you're right, Fred. And basically, you think of it as what kind of PM procedures or equipment standard or equipment or locations that you want categorize for certain checklist. And then you can, create your SLAs based on that criteria. So for example, you have one checklist for particular PM procedure, and then you want, but for in that PM procedure, there's certain equipment standard that you want additional checklist. So what you can do is you can create SLA for that PM procedure, but with that first checklist, and then you can create another SLAs with PM procedure and that equipment standard or equipment code, and then you can add a couple of checklists towards that SLA. So the current design is to allows you to be able to be very flexibly link, and then based on after you generate your work, So for that, for the equipment that within that PM procedure that match that equipment standard, you will get 2 checklists. But for for the other ones that don't match that equipment standard, they will get only 1 checklist.
I think your answer requires a diagram, but yeah, that's about right. I mean, it's the flexibility. I mean, the point is that it is flexible, but what Ying brings up is that it does require some coordination among how you're defining your checklist versus how you're defining your SLAs.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. The next question, in the demo, all of the answers were yes or passed. Can you show an answer of no with a comment?
Yeah.
There was, oh, go ahead. Sorry, Ying, go ahead, please.
Yeah, you can you know, for comment for yes and no, yeah, you can have the comments for any of the answers that you can have your customized answer, and then you can add a no. You can have a comments for it.
Perfect, thank you. The next question is, when the cleaning requests are generated, can the questionnaires in maintenance apply to the desk booker? For example, a checklist that the desk booker did cleaning tasks.
Not sure if I followed that. I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? Unless Octavian, you did a lot of. Did you understand? Was that clear to you?
No, if you can read again the question, please.
Sure. Sure. So when cleaning, when the cleaning requests are generated, yes, can the questionnaires in maintenance apply to the desk booker? So I guess they're asking, can we create a checklist for that person who booked the desk to check off that they have completed the cleaning task?
Oh, I understand. So I think that's maybe for Ying to respond. So in when we so once a desk has been booked, there is a request for the floor to be cleaned, not for the desk itself. So the request that we are creating is for the entire floor, and in the description field it lists all the desks to be cleaned. So in my opinion, it wouldn't be addressed directly to one booker on that floor, but to the entire floor.
But it's an interesting case that, and maybe I'm interpreting this incorrectly, but it's an interesting case where if you did do that process, you could actually create a checklist that that has some questions about did you clean all the desks that had been, a verification sort of, did you clean all the desks that have been used by hoteling, and maybe we'll have to think about that further about integrating those two, but maybe that's how I interpreted that. It's an interesting point.
It's a very good idea, and I think I noted it down. Feel free to add it to user voice as well, and I look into it, especially because we also have the ability to collect the customer satisfaction, right, for every request.
Yes. Yes, okay, thank you. So it looks like we maybe have time for one more question. So on return to office, does it allow for 2 weeks in the office and 2 weeks work at home?
This was a question that is asked, I think actually I remember from last, from 25.2 as well. The way that I recommended to handle those cases is by defining a return to work info by which is a field that is attached to the employee by cohort. So you may have a cohort of first 2 weeks of the month and last 2 weeks of the month, for example, or even weeks and odd weeks, so that if you did have a rotating 2-week schedule, that to me would be the easiest way to enable that sort of process, and it avoids that kind of, I think that data maintenance is if you're trying to do specific days of the week on a 2-week cadence, it might, that's a lot of data to try to maintain. So I would recommend doing it by defining cohorts.
Got it, thank you. Okay, so I apologize that we weren't able to get to all of the questions, but as I mentioned, we will create an FAQ document with the questions from the session, and we will send that out with the recording. So that will probably be later today or tomorrow. So with that, I just want to say thank you again to everyone for attending, and thank you, Fred, Octavian, and Ying.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for your attention, and I appreciate the questions as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.